The bank phoned me and said, "I don't believe that's you. Your wife is here right now with a man who looks exactly like you." I answered, "That's impossible. She's visiting her sick mom." The voice said, "Please come in immediately now." Can you imagine looking into the eyes of the person you've loved for 5 years, sharing your bed, your life, your dreams, only to discover they were meticulously planning your murder? Because that's my story. And the horrifying truth is, I almost didn't live to tell it. My name is Edwin, and I'm 49. I thought I knew Jolene. We'd been married for 5 years, 5 beautiful years where she'd bring me coffee every morning and kiss me goodbye before work. I thought I knew everything about the woman I shared my life with. Boy, was I wrong. About everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon in December. My phone rang at work, and the caller ID flashed. First National Bank. I was knee-deep in quarterly reports, ready to ignore another credit card sales pitch, but some gut feeling, made me pick up. "Mr. Edwin Hartwell?" a female voice asked. Professional, but with an underlying current that made my stomach clench. "Yes, this is Edwin. Sir, I'm calling from First National Bank. Please don't think I'm crazy, but are you currently at our downtown branch?" I blinked, my pen freezing midair. "No, I'm at my office." "Why would you ask that?" There was a pause, and I could hear papers rustling. "Sir, I don't think that's you here at the bank. Your wife is here right now with a man who looks exactly like you, and they're trying to access your joint savings account." The words hit me like a physical blow. The air rushed out of my lungs, and I gripped the phone, knuckles white. "That's impossible," I stammered. "My wife, Jolene, she's visiting her sick mother across town. She left this morning." "Sir," the voice continued, now laced with undeniable concern, "I think you need to come in right away. There's something very wrong here." I hung up, staring at the phone like it had just betrayed me. Jolene visiting her mother. That's what she told me. For the past 2 years, she'd been making these trips twice a week, ever since her mom's health started failing. Medical bills had been mounting, and we were covering them together. It was one of the things I loved most about Jolene, her devotion to family. But now, a bank employee was telling me she was downtown with someone who looked like me? My hands shook as I grabbed my jacket and keys, locking my office door. The 12-minute drive to the bank felt like an eternity. My mind raced, desperate to find a logical explanation. Mistaken identity? Maybe Jolene finished early, needed banking business, and that man was a bank employee. The woman on the phone must be confused. But deep down, something cold was spreading through my chest. A feeling I couldn't name, but recognized as pure dread. First National Bank, a sturdy brick building, had been my bank for 8 years. I knew most of the employees. As I walked through the glass doors, my heart hammered against my ribs. The lobby smelled like every other bank, air conditioning and carpet cleaner. A few customers in line, everything looked normal. Too normal for the earth-shattering phone call I'd just received. I approached the customer service desk. A woman in her 50s with kind, graying hair looked up at me, relief washing over her face. "Mr. Hartwell, thank goodness you're here. I'm Margaret." We spoke on the phone. "Where are they?" I asked, my voice rough, impatient. Margaret gestured toward a small conference room. "They left about 10 minutes ago." "But Mr. Hartwell, you need to see what happened here." She led me to her desk and pulled out a thick folder. "This isn't the first time we've seen strange activity on your accounts. Over the past 18 months, there have been multiple attempts to access your savings. Documentation that seemed legitimate but felt off." My stomach dropped. "What kind of attempts?" "Withdrawals, transfer requests, inquiries about your account balances. Always when you were supposedly out of town for work." Margaret opened the folder, revealing a stack of transaction records. The man today had identification that looked perfect. But something about him just felt wrong. And when your wife couldn't answer basic security questions about your account history, I knew we had a problem. My vision blurred as I stared at the papers. "What kind of security questions?" "The date you opened your first account with us. Your mother's maiden name. The amount of your initial deposit. Basic things any spouse should know, especially since your wife is listed on the account." The cold feeling in my chest intensified, reaching my fingertips. Jolene didn't know any of those things. Because she'd never asked? In 5 years, she'd never shown interest in our finances. I thought it was trust, that she trusted me to handle everything. Now, that trust felt different. So painfully naive. Margaret leaned closer, lowering her voice. Mr. Hartwell, I've been in banking for 27 years. I've seen identity theft, fraud, but this feels personal. This feels like someone very close to you has detailed information about your life, and they're using it against you. I sank into the chair. How much did they try to access? $45,000 from your joint savings account. The full balance. $45,000. It was another punch to the gut. Money we'd saved, money I'd earned through overtime and weekend shifts. Money for our future, a down payment on a bigger house, that vacation we talked about. Did they get it? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. No. I stopped the transaction when something felt off. But Mr. Hartwell, they had all the right paperwork. Identification, authorization forms, even what looked like a power of attorney document giving your wife permission to make large withdrawals. I rubbed my forehead, a headache starting to bloom. I never signed any power of attorney. Margaret nodded grimly. That's what I was afraid of. She handed me a photocopy of a driver's license. This is the ID the man presented. My blood ran cold. The name was mine, Edwin Michael Hartwell. The address, height, weight, all correct. But the face, incredibly similar, yet subtly wrong. The nose, the jawline, the eyes. It was me, but not me. This man looks like your twin brother, Margaret said quietly. I don't have a twin brother, I replied automatically. But even as I said it, something Jolene had mentioned years ago nagged at me. Family she didn't talk about. Complicated, she'd said, and left it at that. Margaret handed me one last paper. There's something else. This morning, before they arrived, we received a call from someone claiming to be you, asking about procedures for large withdrawals. The caller knew details about your account that only you should know. The call log showed 9:47 a.m. At 9:47 a.m., I was reviewing budget reports, sending emails, and about to join a conference call. I had proof. Someone's been watching you, Mr. Hartwell, Margaret said softly. Someone's been learning your routines, your schedule, your personal information. And they've been planning this for a long time. I stood up, my legs suddenly unsteady. The bank lobby, the city outside, everything looked distorted, like I was seeing it through a fog. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my wife, was dissolving beneath my feet. What do I do now? I asked. Margaret's expression was sympathetic, but firm. You go home, and you look for things that don't belong. You check your mail, your documents, your personal papers. And Mr. Hartwell, you think very carefully about who has access to your life. I thanked her, walking back to my car in a daze. The drive home felt endless, yet it passed in a blur. Jolene's twice-weekly visits to her sick mother. How devoted she seemed. How she never let me come along because her mother was too weak for visitors. How she always knew when I'd be working late or traveling. As I pulled into our driveway, her car wasn't there yet. Still at her mother's? Or somewhere else entirely? Maybe she'd never been at her mother's at all. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the house we'd shared for 5 years. The beige sofa, the coffee table with her magazines, the family photos on the mantel. Everything looked the same, but it felt like a stage set now, props in a play I didn't know I was performing in. I walked into our bedroom and opened Jolene's closet. Nothing amiss. Then I opened my closet, and my breath caught. Hidden behind my winter coats was a gray sweater I'd never seen. Next to it, a pair of jeans that weren't mine, but would fit me perfectly. The clothes were exactly my style, the brands I preferred. But I'd never bought them. Someone else had. Someone who needed to look like me. I sank onto the edge of the bed, Margaret's words echoing, "Someone's been watching you. Someone's been learning your routines." As I sat there, in the room I'd shared with my wife, surrounded by memories we'd built, I realized I had no idea who Jolene really was. And I was terrified to find out. I waited for Jolene to come home, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The gray sweater and jeans lay on the chair across from me, tangible proof that my life wasn't what I thought it was. Every few minutes I checked my phone, wondering where my wife was, and who she was with. She walked through the front door at 6:37 p.m., precisely when she always did after her mother visits. I heard her keys hit the dish, her heels click across the hardwood floor, her cheerful voice calling out, "Edwin, honey, I'm home. How was your day?" That same voice I'd fallen in love with. "In the kitchen," I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. Jolene appeared in the doorway. For a moment, I just looked at her, really looked. 34 years old, shoulder-length blonde hair, perfectly styled. Green eyes that always sparkled with warmth, a smile that made me feel like the luckiest man alive. She wore a navy blue dress I'd complimented her on just last week. She looked exactly like the woman I'd married. But now, looking for it, I saw a subtle tightness around her eyes, a carefully controlled quality to her movements that had never registered before. "How's your mother?" I asked, gesturing for her to sit. Jolene's smile flickered, just for a split second, before returning full force. "Oh, you know how it is. Some days are better than others. The physical therapy helps, but she gets so tired." She moved toward the refrigerator, not sitting. "Dr. Martinez thinks we might need to increase her medication again." I nodded, watching her carefully. "That's expensive." "Well, it's family," she said, her back to me as she reached for a bottle of water. "We do what we have to do." I waited, then asked, "What's her doctor's full name again? I might want to call and ask about payment plans." Jolene froze, her hands still on the refrigerator handle. "Oh, honey, you don't need to worry about that. I handle all the medical stuff. You know how confusing all those insurance forms can be." She turned around with a bright smile, but I caught something in her expression, the fleeting look of someone caught off guard, buying time to think. "Actually, I called the insurance company today," I said, keeping my voice casual, though my heart was hammering. "They said there's a problem with Mom's coverage." "What kind of problem?" Jolene's voice was still light, but she gripped the water bottle tighter than necessary. "They said her policy was cancelled 8 months ago for non-payment." The silence that followed stretched between us like a taut wire. Jolene blinked once, twice. A skilled liar would have had a ready response. An explanation. But Jolene looked genuinely shocked, like she'd been slapped. "That can't be right," she finally said. "I've been paying those premiums every month." "With what money?" I asked quietly, my voice hard. "Because I looked at our bank statements, Jolene. $3,000 every month for medical expenses. But if there's no insurance coverage, where's that money been going?" The water bottle slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. Neither of us moved to pick it up. Jolene stared at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw fear in her green eyes. "Edwin, I can explain," she said, but her voice was smaller now, less sure. "Can you?" "Because I had an interesting conversation at the bank today." Her face went pale. "The bank?" "Someone tried to withdraw $45,000 from our savings account today. A man who looked exactly like me, accompanied by my wife. But here's the thing, Jolene. I was at work all day. And you told me you were with your mother." She sat down heavily in the chair across from me, right on top of the gray sweater. She didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did, and was trying to hide it. Her hands were shaking as she clasped them together. "This is all a misunderstanding," she rushed out. "There must be some kind of identity theft. Someone's been using our information." I reached across the table and gently moved her hands aside, revealing the gray sweater beneath. "Is this yours?" I asked. Jolene's breath caught. She stared at the sweater like it was a snake that might bite her. "I've never seen that before. It was in my closet, Jolene. In the back, behind my winter coats. Along with a pair of jeans that aren't mine, but would fit me perfectly. Someone's been keeping clothes in our house that are meant to make them look like me." The fight drained out of her. Her shoulders sagged, and she buried her face in her hands. For a moment, I thought she was going to cry. And despite everything, a surge of sympathy washed over me. This was still my wife, the woman I'd loved. Seeing her break down hurt more than I'd expected. But when she looked up, there were no tears. Just a kind of calculating resignation, as if she were deciding how much truth to tell. "Edwin, you have to understand. I never meant for it to go this far." "How far? How far was it supposed to go?" She took a shaky breath. "My brother needed help." "Your brother?" I stared. "Jolene, you told me you were an only child. 5 years ago, when we were dating, you said your parents died when you were young, and you had no other family except your mother." I lied. The words came out flat, matter-of-fact. "I have a twin brother, Marcus." We look very similar, my mother and I, and him and you. It's something that runs in our family. Strong genetic resemblance patterns. My mind reeled. A twin brother. That explained the man at the bank. The man who looked like me but wasn't quite right. Where is he? He's been staying with my mother for the past 2 years. He lost his job, got into some financial trouble. He needed help getting back on his feet. And the medical expenses? The $3,000 a month? Jolene's voice got even smaller. That was for him. To help him pay his debts. Get a fresh start. I knew you wouldn't understand. You're so careful with money. So, I told you it was for Mom's medical bills. I felt like I was falling down a dark, endless hole. Your mother isn't sick. She is sick. Just not the way I told you. She's sick with worry about Marcus, about what he might do if we don't help him. What he might do, Jolene? What are you talking about? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus has done this before. With other people. He studies them, learns their habits, their routines. He becomes them, temporarily. Just long enough to access their money. The coffee cup in my hands felt ice cold. Are you telling me your brother is a professional con artist? He's family, Edwin. He's my twin brother. You don't understand what that bond is like. How connected we are. When he hurts, I hurt. When he's in trouble, I have to help him. I set the cup down carefully, afraid I might throw it if I held it any longer. How long have you been helping him rob me, Jolene? It's not robbery, she said quickly. It's borrowing. He always planned to pay it back once he got established somewhere new. $45,000 plus $3,000 a month for 2 years. That's $117,000, Jolene. How exactly was your unemployed brother planning to pay that back? She didn't answer. And in her silence, I heard the truth she couldn't say out loud. He'd never planned to pay it back. This had always been a long-term theft, and I had been the mark. How does he look so much like me? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Jolene glanced up at me, then away. He's very good at what he does. He studies photos, practices mannerisms, even had some minor cosmetic work done to adjust a few facial features. And he had help. What kind of help? I gave him information about you. Your habits. Your schedule. Your personal details. Things a wife would naturally know about her husband. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I'd ever experienced. I had trusted this woman with every detail of my life, my hopes, my fears, my daily routines. And she had catalogued it all, passing it on to a criminal who used it to steal from me. The bank employee said there had been other attempts over the past 18 months. How many times has he done this? Small amounts at first. $500 here, $1,000 there. Always when you were working late or traveling for business. I made sure he knew your schedule. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the kitchen floor. How could you do this to me, Jolene? How could you sit across from me every morning, kiss me goodbye every day, lie in bed next to me every night, knowing what you were doing? For the first time, she looked genuinely remorseful. I love you, Edwin. I really do. This thing with Marcus, it's complicated. It's family obligation. It's not about my feelings for you. Your family obligation was to steal my life savings? No. It was supposed to stop after he got enough to relocate, but he kept needing more. And Mom kept saying he was almost ready to go legitimate. And I kept thinking, just one more time, just a little bit more, and then it would be over. I walked to the kitchen window and stared out at our backyard. The small garden we'd planted together. The patio furniture we'd picked out. Everything looked normal. But nothing was real anymore. Where is he now? I asked without turning around. I don't know. After the bank thing didn't work today, he was supposed to call me, but he hasn't. And your mother? Is she even involved, or is she just another victim? Jolene's voice was barely audible. She raised us to look out for each other. She's always protected Marcus, made excuses for him. She knew what we were doing. I turned back to face her. We? Jolene, you keep saying we like you're equally guilty. You are equally guilty. You chose this. You chose to betray your husband to help your criminal brother steal from the man who loved you. She started crying then. Quiet tears streaming down her cheeks. I know. I know how it sounds. But you don't understand what it's like to have someone you love be so desperate, so lost. I thought I could help him and protect you at the same time. Protect me? You've been robbing me for 2 years. I kept him from taking everything at once. I made sure he only took amounts you wouldn't notice right away. I was trying to buy time to figure out another way. The absurdity of it hit me like a slap. She thought she'd been protecting me by managing the pace of the theft. She thought she was being considerate by stealing smaller amounts over a longer period, instead of taking everything at once. I need you to leave, I said quietly. Edwin, please let me explain everything. Let me help you understand. You've explained enough. I need you to pack a bag and go stay somewhere else tonight. I need time to think. Jolene wiped her eyes and nodded. Can I come back tomorrow? Can we talk about this more when you've had time to process? I looked at her. This woman I'd loved, trusted, and planned to spend my life with. And I realized I didn't know who she was at all. The person sitting in my kitchen was a stranger who looked like my wife, but had been lying to me for years. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know anything anymore. As she gathered her things, I wondered what else I didn't know. What other lies? What other secrets? But what scared me most was the thought that this might not be over. That Marcus, wherever he was, might not be finished with me yet. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every sound in the house made me jump, every creak of the floorboards had me wondering if someone was trying to break in. The gray sweater and jeans still lay on the kitchen table, physical proof that my life had been invaded by a stranger who looked like me. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made coffee. As I sat at my kitchen counter, staring out at the dark street, I knew I needed answers. Real answers? Not the carefully parsed half-truths Jolene had fed me. If I was going to figure out how deep this went, I needed to do some investigating of my own. I started with the obvious place, our home office. Jolene handled most of our household paperwork, and I'd always been grateful for her organization and attention to detail. Now, that trust felt like the biggest mistake of my life. The file cabinet was locked. That should have been my first clue. In 5 years, I'd never seen her lock it. When I asked once, she'd laughed, saying she was protecting our important documents from burglars. It took me 20 minutes to find the key, hidden behind a pair of earrings I'd given her for our 3rd anniversary. My hands shook as I unlocked the cabinet, unsure if it was from caffeine or nerves. The first folder, labeled Medical Expenses, in Jolene's neat handwriting, contained dozens of invoices, all supposedly from Dr. Martinez's office, all billing for her mother's ongoing treatment. The amounts were staggering: $3,200 for physical therapy, $2,800 for consultations, $4,100 for emergency treatments. But as I looked closer, something didn't add up. The letterhead was wrong, slightly off-center. The font didn't quite match the clinic's website I pulled up on my phone. The invoice numbers followed a pattern that seemed too neat, too sequential. These weren't real medical bills. They were forgeries. The second folder was worse. Much worse. Labeled Property Management. It contained documents I'd never seen. A deed transfer form for our house, dated just 6 months ago, showing the property had been transferred from both our names to just Jolene's. Below that, a mortgage refinancing agreement that I'd apparently signed, taking out a home equity loan for $190,000 against the house. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, but I'd never signed this. I'd never even seen it. My house, the house I'd lived in for 8 years, the house I'd bought 2 years before I even met Jolene, was no longer legally mine. The third folder made my blood run cold. It contained copies of identification documents for someone named Marcus Reeves, driver's license, social security card, passport, even a birth certificate. The photo on the license showed the face I'd seen at the bank, the man who looked like me but wasn't quite right. Attached to the IDs was a handwritten note in Jolene's writing: practice schedule. Edwin leaves for work, 7:45 a.m., Monday through Friday. Gym, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. Business trips, first week of every month. Favorite restaurants, Romano's, Friday nights. Coffee shop on 5th Street, Saturday mornings. Signature practice on back. I flipped the paper over. My stomach dropped. Someone had been practicing my signature, over and over, getting progressively better at mimicking my handwriting. At the bottom, below dozens of imperfect imitations, were the words: Edwin Michael Hartwell. Repeated again and again. But there was more. A timeline, written in Jolene's hand, showing dates and activities going back 2 full years, month 1 to 3, information gathering phase. Established trust and daily routines. Month 4 to 8, documentation collection. Copy important papers, establish banking patterns. Month 9 to 12, small withdrawals begin. Test security measures and response times. Month 13 to 18, increase withdrawal amounts. Establish medical emergency narrative. Month 19 to 24, property transfer and equity extraction. Prepare for final phase. Month 25 plus, complete asset transfer and relocation. I was looking at a 2-year plan to steal my entire life, written in my wife's handwriting. At the bottom of the timeline, in different handwriting, darker, more aggressive, someone had added, "If Edwin becomes suspicious before completion, implement contingency plan, make it look like an accident." My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the papers. Contingency plan, make it look like an accident. They weren't just planning to rob me. If I got too close to the truth, they were planning to kill me. I grabbed my phone and called the number Margaret at the bank had given me, even though it was 4 a.m. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message, asking her to call me ASAP. Then I called the police. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report identity theft and fraud, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. And possibly a conspiracy to commit murder. Detective Sarah Chin arrived, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She sat at my kitchen table, looking through the documents I'd found while I recounted everything. "Mr. Hartwell," she said when I finished, "you're lucky you found these when you did. Based on this timeline, you were very close to the final phase of their operation. What would the final phase have involved? Complete disappearance of your assets, and quite possibly your disappearance as well. That note about making it look like an accident? We take those threats very seriously." Detective Chin photographed every document, placing them carefully in evidence bags. "We'll need to coordinate with the FBI on this. Interstate fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, this is much bigger than a local case. What about Jolene and her brother? We'll put out a bolo, be on the lookout alert, for both of them. Do you have any idea where they might have gone?" I thought about it. In 5 years, Jolene had never mentioned friends or family beyond her mother, and the brother she claimed didn't exist. She'd always said she was a private person, preferred small social circles. Now I realized it was because she'd been lying about her entire background. "Her mother," I said suddenly. "She's been visiting her mother twice a week for 2 years. If that woman even exists, she might know where they went." Detective Chen nodded. "We'll need that address." I gave her the address Jolene had given me, though I now realized I had no idea if it was real. Everything Jolene had told me was suspect. "Mr. Hartwell, I want you to understand something," Detective Chen said as she gathered her paperwork. "The people who did this to you are sophisticated criminals. This wasn't a crime of opportunity or desperation. This was a carefully planned, long-term operation designed to steal your entire life savings, and possibly your life itself. How long do you think they've been doing this? Based on the level of organization and the quality of the forged documents, this isn't their first time. There are probably other victims out there who don't even know they've been robbed yet." After Detective Chen left, I sat alone in my house, or what used to be my house, trying to process everything. The woman I'd loved was a professional criminal. The life we built was an elaborate con. Even the house I was sitting in had been stolen from me. But what scared me most was how close I'd come to losing everything, including my life. If I hadn't gotten that call from the bank, if Margaret hadn't been suspicious, if I hadn't found those documents, I might have disappeared entirely. Another accident victim, in a scheme that had probably claimed other lives. My phone rang just after 7 a.m. It was Margaret from the bank. "Mr. Hartwell, I got your message. Are you all right?" "I'm alive, which is apparently better than I should have expected," I said, and told her what I'd found. "Dear God," she whispered when I finished. "Mr. Hartwell, there's something else you need to know. I did some more research after you left yesterday. I found evidence of similar attempts at other banks in the area. Different names, different faces, but the same pattern, couples where one spouse gradually gains access to the other's financial information. Then a man appears who looks remarkably like the victim. How many other cases? At least 3 that I can find just in our area. And Mr. Hartwell, in 2 of those cases, the original account holder died in accidents shortly after large sums of money were withdrawn from their accounts. The room started spinning. 2 people were dead. 2 people who had probably trusted their spouses the same way I trusted Jolene. Who had probably never suspected they were being set up for murder until it was too late. There's something else, Margaret continued. I checked your account this morning. There was another attempt to access it last night. At 3:17 a.m., someone tried to transfer your entire retirement savings to an offshore account. Did it go through? No. After yesterday's incident, we put a hold on all transactions. But Mr. Hartwell, they're not giving up. They're still actively trying to steal from you, even after their cover was blown. I thought about the timeline I'd found, the plan so carefully laid out over 2 years. They'd invested too much time and effort to walk away empty-handed. They were going to keep coming for me until they got what they wanted, or until someone stopped them. What do I do now? I asked. You stay somewhere safe and you let the police handle this. But Mr. Hartwell, you need to understand that these people are desperate now. Their plan failed. Their cover is blown. And they've got nothing left to lose. That makes them extremely dangerous. As I hung up, I realized I was no longer safe in my own home. The people who had been stealing my life for 2 years knew every detail about my routines, my habits, my hiding places. They knew when I left for work, when I came home, when I was vulnerable. And now they knew I'd discovered their plan. I packed a bag with essential documents and clothes, then drove to a hotel across town. I paid cash and used a fake name, something I'd seen in movies but never thought I'd need to do. As I sat in that anonymous hotel room, staring out at the parking lot, I tried to figure out what I'd done wrong. How had I been so blind? How had I lived with someone for 5 years without seeing who she really was? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Jolene hadn't just been pretending to love me. She'd been studying me. Learning my weaknesses, my blind spots, my capacity for trust. Every kiss, every conversation, every moment of intimacy had been data collection for a criminal operation. I'd been married to a predator who looked like the woman of my dreams. And somewhere out there, she and her brother were planning their next move. I stayed in that hotel for 3 days, jumping at every sound, checking the locks. Detective Chen called twice daily with updates, but the news wasn't good. Jolene and Marcus had vanished. The address Jolene had given for her mother's apartment was a vacant unit, empty for 6 months. The bank account they tried to transfer money to was closed. The trail went cold. But on the 3rd day, Detective Chen called with news that made my blood run cold. Mr. Hartwell, we need to meet. There's something you need to see, and it's not something I want to discuss over the phone. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far from anywhere Jolene would know to look for me. Detective Chen looked tired, like she'd been working around the clock. The folder in her hands was thick with new documents. We've been investigating the other cases I mentioned, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. And we've uncovered something much bigger than we initially thought. She opened the folder and pulled out a series of photographs. Do you recognize any of these people? I looked at the photos. 3 couples, all appearing happy and in love. In each photo, the women looked different hair colors, styles, facial structures. But something about their expressions was familiar. A calculating quality in their eyes that reminded me of Jolene. I don't recognize them. Look closer at the men. I studied the male faces. My stomach dropped. They all looked like variations of the same person. Different hairstyles, different clothing, but the same basic bone structure, the same facial proportions. They looked like brothers. These are all Marcus? I asked. We think so. We think Marcus Reeves, or whatever his real name is, has been assuming different identities and targeting men who fit a specific profile, financially stable, socially isolated, trusting personalities. Detective Chen pulled out another set of documents. And the women aren't random either. We think they're all the same person. I stared at her. What do you mean? Plastic surgery, hair dye, colored contacts, even dental work to change the shape of her face. The woman you knew as Jolene has been married at least 4 times under different names. Each time, she and Marcus spent 2 to 3 years setting up their victims. Then they drained their assets and disappeared. The coffee in my cup had gone cold, but I couldn't have swallowed it anyway. You're telling me my entire marriage was fake? More than fake. Professional. Mr. Hartwell, we think you were targeted specifically. The house you bought 8 years ago, your job, your social habits. They chose you because you fit their victim profile perfectly. She handed me a timeline that showed dates going back 7 years. We think they've been watching you longer than you realized. Small interactions over the years, casual meetings, background research. By the time Jolene accidentally met you at that bookstore 5 years ago, they already knew everything about your financial situation, your emotional vulnerabilities, your daily routines. I thought back to how I'd met Jolene. We'd both been reaching for the same book, and she'd laughed, saying I could have it if I discussed it with her over coffee. It had felt like fate, a romantic meet-cute story. But it had been a setup from the beginning. What happened to the other men? I asked, afraid to hear the answer. Detective Chen's expression darkened. Robert Mansfield, age 51, died in a car accident 6 months after his wife emptied their joint savings account. David Park, age 47, apparent suicide by drowning, 3 weeks after discovering his wife had transferred his house to her name. Michael Torres, age 53, fatal heart attack during what his wife claimed was an argument about money. But the autopsy showed signs of digitalis poisoning. They murdered them. We can't prove it yet, but yes, we believe so. The pattern is consistent. Once the men discover the theft or become suspicious, they die in ways that look accidental or natural. My hands were shaking again. I gripped my coffee cup, trying to steady myself. How close was I? Based on the timeline in your house and the fact that they tried to access your retirement funds after their cover was blown, I'd say you were maybe weeks away from your accident. Detective Chen leaned forward, her expression serious. Mr. Hartwell, there's something else. We found evidence that they were planning something specific for you. She pulled out one more document, a handwritten note in Jolene's writing. We found this in a storage unit they rented under fake names. I read the note, and my vision blurred. With rage. Edwin's life insurance policy, worth $250,000. Accidental death clause pays double. Plan for hunting accident during annual trip to cabin. Marcus will be hunting partner/witness. Clean gunshot wound. No signs of struggle. Story, gun misfired while E was cleaning rifle. M will comfort grieving widow. Help settle estate. I set the paper down carefully, afraid I might tear it apart. They were going to kill me on my hunting trip next month. And Marcus was going to be there as my new friend. Someone Jolene had introduced me to who shared my interest in hunting. He would have been the only witness to my tragic accident. The calculating coldness of it took my breath away. They'd planned to murder me in a way that would look completely natural, with Marcus right there to control the narrative and comfort my grieving widow. Jolene would have collected my life insurance, inherited what was left of my assets, and then disappeared to start the process all over again with a new identity and a new victim. How many people have they killed? I asked. We don't know yet. We're working with federal authorities to trace their movements over the past decade, but Mr. Hartwell, we think you might be the first victim who discovered the truth in time to stop them. Detective Chen closed the folder and looked at me seriously. Which brings us to our next problem. They know you're alive. They know their plan failed, and they know you have evidence that could put them away for life. They're not going to just disappear and start over somewhere else. They're going to want to silence you permanently. So what do I do? We want to use you as bait. I stared at her. You want me to what? They're going to come for you eventually. They have to. You're the only person alive who can connect them to their crimes. Instead of waiting for them to choose the time and place, we want to control the situation. Set a trap, and catch them in the act. The idea terrified me, but I could see the logic. What kind of trap? We'll set up surveillance and put you back in your normal routine, but with undercover protection. When they make their move, we'll be ready. And if something goes wrong? If they get to me before you can stop them? Detective Chen's expression was grim but determined. That's a risk. But Mr. Hartwell, these people have killed at least 3 men, possibly more. If we don't stop them now, they'll keep doing this. They'll find new victims, new identities, and the cycle will continue. I thought about the other men, the ones who had died because they trusted the wrong person. Robert Mansfield, David Park, Michael Torres. They'd probably loved their wives the same way I'd loved Jolene. They'd probably never suspected they were being set up for murder until it was too late. If I do this, I said slowly, what are the chances you'll catch them? Good. They're desperate now, which means they'll make mistakes. and we'll be ready for them. I sat in that coffee shop for another hour, weighing my options. I could disappear, change my name, start over somewhere else. But that would mean spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if they'd found me. And it would mean other innocent men would die because I was too scared to help stop them. Or I could trust Detective Chen and the federal agents. Put my life on the line to end this once and for all. What would I have to do? I asked finally. Go back to your house. Resume your normal routine as much as possible. Go to work. Go to the gym. Follow the patterns Jolene documented. But you'll have protection. Undercover agents posing as neighbors, surveillance equipment, panic buttons. The moment they show up, we'll be ready. And if they don't take the bait? They will. They have to. You know too much. And they can't risk you staying alive. That evening, I checked out of the hotel and drove back to my house. For the first time in 3 days, it looked exactly the same from the outside. But walking through the front door felt like entering a stranger's home. Everything reminded me of Jolene. The couch we'd picked out. The kitchen table where we'd eaten breakfast. The bedroom where she'd lied next to me night after night, while planning my murder. Detective Chen introduced me to the agents who would be watching over me. Agent Martinez would pose as a new neighbor. Agent Thompson would monitor from a cable repair truck. Agent Walsh would be my shadow, close enough to intervene, but far enough away to avoid detection. They'll probably watch you for a few days before making their move, Detective Chen explained. They'll want to make sure you're not under police protection, that you're following your normal routine. The key is to act natural. Act natural. As if anything about this situation could be natural. That first night back, I barely slept. Every sound had me reaching for the panic button. But morning came without incident. I forced myself through my usual routine: shower, coffee, news, leave for work at 7:45 a.m. At work, I tried to focus, but my mind kept wandering. Were they watching? How long would I live this way? But as the days passed, I found myself feeling something unexpected: anger. Not just fear, but a burning rage at what they'd done to me, and to the other men who hadn't been lucky enough to escape. They'd stolen 5 years of my life. Made me fall in love with a lie. Planned to murder me and collect money from my death. I wanted them caught. I wanted them to pay. And I was willing to risk everything to make that happen. For 5 days, nothing happened. I followed the routine Jolene had so carefully documented. Every morning, I expected to see a familiar face watching me. Every evening, I wondered if tonight would be the night. The waiting was torture. On the 6th day, things started to change. I was leaving for work when I noticed a new car parked 3 houses down. A gray sedan with tinted windows, the kind of vehicle designed to be forgettable. As I drove past, I couldn't see the driver clearly, but something about the silhouette seemed familiar. When I got to work, I called Detective Chen. There's a gray sedan on my street. License plate Echo Delta 7492. I heard her typing. We're running it now. Stay calm, Mr. Hartwell. If it's them, we're ready. But I wasn't calm. After 6 days of nothing, the sudden appearance of watchers felt like the beginning of the end. They were here. And soon, this nightmare would be over, one way or another. The gray sedan was gone when I came home from work, but I knew they'd been watching, learning my patterns, making sure I wasn't under protection, planning their approach. That night, Detective Chen called with confirmation. The sedan is registered to a company that doesn't exist. Fake registration, fake insurance, probably stolen plates. It's them. What happens now? We wait for them to make their move. They won't do anything tonight. They'll want to watch you for at least a few more days to make sure you're alone. But Mr. Hartwell, when they do act, it'll be fast. They can't afford to let this drag out. I barely slept. When I did, I dreamed about the hunting trip I'd never taken. In the dream, I was cleaning my rifle when it went off, and Marcus was there, shaking his head sadly as he called 911. Jolene waited in the car, already planning how to spend my life insurance. The second day of surveillance was worse. The gray sedan was back, with a different license plate, and I spotted it following me to work. When I went to the gym, it was there. When I stopped for groceries, it followed. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. They wanted me to know I was being watched, to feel scared and isolated. It was psychological warfare. But I had advantages they didn't know about. Every time I spotted them, I pressed the small button on my keychain, signaling my location to the federal agents. Every route was monitored. On the third day, the pattern changed again. I was at work when my secretary, Linda, knocked on my office door. "Mr. Hartwell, there's a woman here to see you. She says she's your wife." My blood went cold. "What does she look like?" Linda looked confused. "Blonde hair, green eyes, very pretty. She seems upset about something." "Jolene. Here. At my workplace. Taking an enormous risk. Either she was desperate, or this was part of some larger plan." "Tell her I'll be right out," I said, immediately pressing the panic button. I walked to the lobby on unsteady legs, my heart pounding. And there she was, sitting in one of the leather chairs, looking exactly like the woman I'd fallen in love with. But now I knew what to look for. The way her eyes scanned the room, cataloging exits. The way her purse was positioned for easy access. The calculated quality of her tears. "Edwin," she said, standing as I approached. "Thank God! I've been so worried about you." I kept my distance, staying near the reception desk where Linda could see and hear everything. "What do you want, Jolene?" "I want to explain. I want to make this right." She took a step toward me, and I took a step back. "Can we talk privately? Please? Anything you have to say, you can say here." Her expression flickered. For a moment, I saw frustration beneath the mask of concern. "Edwin, you don't understand what you've gotten yourself into. There are people involved in this who are very dangerous. If you don't drop the police investigation, they're going to hurt you." I almost laughed at the audacity. She was threatening me while pretending to warn me. "What people? Marcus isn't who you think he is. He's not just my brother. He works for some very bad people. And when this job went wrong, they blamed him. Now they want to clean up the mess, and that includes anyone who can identify him." It was a clever story. If I hadn't seen the documents, if I didn't know the truth, I might have believed it. Jolene, the concerned wife, trying to protect her husband from dangerous criminals. "So, you're saying Marcus threatened me?" "I'm saying Marcus answers to people who don't leave loose ends. And right now, Edwin, you're a very dangerous loose end." She was still trying to manipulate me, still trying to make me believe she was on my side. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Drop the investigation. Tell the police you were mistaken. That it was all a misunderstanding. Take the money you still have and disappear for a while. I can help you start over somewhere safe." "And you? What happens to you in this scenario?" "I disappear too. We both start over, separately. It's the only way to keep you safe." I stared at her, this woman who had shared my bed for 5 years while planning my murder, and felt nothing but cold disgust. "You're still lying to me." Her mask slipped again, just for a second. I saw the calculation. "Edwin, please. I know you don't trust me, but I'm trying to save your life. Why should I believe anything you say?" "Because I truly love you." The words came out with perfect sincerity. And if I hadn't known better, I might have believed them. "I know how this looks. I know what you think happened, but my feelings for you were always real." That was the most insulting lie of all. Love wasn't a game you played while planning someone's murder. Love wasn't studying someone for 2 years to steal their life more efficiently. "Get out," I said quietly. "Edwin, please listen to me. Get out, or I'll call security." For a moment, her composure cracked completely. The concerned wife act fell away, and I saw the cold professional underneath. Her green eyes went flat and emotionless. Her mouth set in a thin line of frustration. "You're making a mistake," she said, and this time there was no fake emotion in her voice. "A very dangerous mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you." She stared at me for a long moment, then picked up her purse and walked toward the exit. At the door, she turned back. "Goodbye, Edwin. I hope you survive what's coming." Then she was gone, disappearing into the parking lot where I was sure Marcus was waiting for her. I went back to my office and called Detective Chin immediately. "She was here," I said. "Jolene came to my office. We know. We followed her from your house. She's in a blue Honda with Marcus right now, heading south on Highway 61. We've got units tracking them. She threatened me. Not directly, but she made it clear that bad things would happen if I didn't drop the investigation. That confirms what we suspected. They're getting desperate, which means they'll make their move soon. Probably tonight." I sat down heavily in my office chair, The reality of the situation hit me again. Tonight. After 5 years of marriage, after 2 years of being systematically robbed, after discovering that the woman I loved had been planning my murder, it would all end tonight. What do I do? Go home. Follow your normal routine. We'll be watching. And the moment they make their move, we'll take them down. And if something goes wrong? Detective Chen was quiet for a moment. Nothing will go wrong, Mr. Hartwell. We've got this under control. But as I drove home that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jolene and Marcus had one more card to play. They'd been doing this for years, killed at least 3 men, and evaded capture every time. They weren't going to go quietly. The house felt different when I walked through the front door. Emptier. More dangerous. Every shadow could be hiding a threat. Every sound could be them coming for me. I made dinner and tried to eat, but the food tasted like cardboard. I turned on the television, but I couldn't focus on anything except the windows, the doors, the ways someone could get in. At 9 p.m. my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Edwin. Marcus's voice. Deeper than I remembered. More threatening. Did you enjoy your conversation with my sister today? What do you want? I want you to understand something. We've been very patient with you. Very understanding. But that patience has limits. I'm not afraid of you. He laughed, a humorless, chilling sound. You should be. Do you know what happened to Robert Mansfield? David Park? Michael Torres? The names of the dead men hit me like physical blows. You killed them. We did what was necessary. And if you don't stop interfering with our business, we'll do what's necessary with you too. The police are listening to this call. No. They're not. We're using equipment that makes tracking impossible. But Edwin, here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of your house in exactly 10 minutes. You're going to get in your car and drive to the address we're about to text you. You're going to come alone, and you're going to bring every piece of evidence you think you have against us. And if I don't? Then we'll come to you. And when we do, it won't be quick. The line went dead. A few seconds later, my phone chimed with a text message containing an address I didn't recognize. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking. They wanted to meet face to face, to end this once and for all. But they didn't know about the federal agents watching my house. Didn't know that every move they made was being monitored. I pressed the panic button and waited for my phone to ring. Mr. Hartwell. Detective Chen's voice. They want to meet tonight. They're going to text me an address. We heard. We've been monitoring all cell traffic in your area. Don't go to that address, Mr. Hartwell. It's a trap. But what if they come here instead? Then we'll be ready for them. Trust me, this is almost over. I hung up and sat in my living room, waiting. The house was completely quiet, except for the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. At 9:47 p.m., exactly 10 minutes after Marcus's call, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. Someone was picking the lock on my front door. The soft scratching sound was almost inaudible. But in the silence of my house, it might as well have been a fire alarm. I pressed the panic button 3 times in rapid succession, the signal Detective Chen told me to use if they were actually inside my house. I crept toward the kitchen, staying low, avoiding the windows. The agents outside would be moving into position, but I had no way of knowing how long it would take them to get here, or if they'd arrive before Marcus and Jolene finished picking the lock. The scratching stopped. Complete silence. Then I heard the soft click of the front door opening. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. Through the kitchen window, I could see Agent Martinez's house across the street, but there was no sign of movement. Where were they? Edwin? Jolene's voice called softly from the front hallway. We know you're here. We just want to talk. I stayed silent, pressed against the kitchen wall where I couldn't be seen. This doesn't have to end badly. She continued, and I could hear her footsteps moving slowly through my house. We can work something out. We can all walk away from this. More footsteps, heavier ones. Marcus was with her, moving through my living room. I could hear him checking closets, looking under the couch, searching for me systematically. Edwin? This time it was Marcus's voice, and he was closer, much closer. We found your panic button on the coffee table. Very thoughtful of you to leave it where we could see it. My heart sank. I'd been so careful to keep the panic button with me, but in my fear I must have set it down when I went to get the knife. They knew I'd called for help. The police aren't coming, Jolene said, now sounding almost sad. We intercepted their communications. Told them you changed your mind, that you wanted to handle this privately. They're not monitoring your house anymore. That couldn't be true, could it? Detective Chin had promised they'd be watching, ready to move the moment Marcus and Jolene showed up. But I hadn't heard sirens, hadn't seen any movement from the surveillance team. You're lying, I called out, hoping my voice sounded more confident than I felt. Am I? Marcus was in the kitchen doorway now, his shadow long on the wall. He looked exactly like me, but there was something wrong with his eyes. Something cold and predatory that had never been in any mirror reflection I'd seen. Check your phone, Edwin. See if you have any missed calls from your police friends. Against my better judgment, I glanced at my phone. No missed calls. No text messages. Nothing. Either they were telling the truth, or the federal agents were playing this very carefully, waiting for the right moment to strike. Why don't you come out where we can see you? Jolene said. We really do just want to talk. I stepped out of the kitchen, the knife still in my hand, and faced the two people who had stolen 5 years of my life. Seeing Marcus in person was like looking into a funhouse mirror. He was my height, my build, with surgically altered features that made him look like my twin. But where I saw doubt and fear in my own reflection, Marcus radiated confidence and barely controlled violence. And Jolene looked exactly like the woman I'd fallen in love with, except for her eyes. Those green eyes that had once looked at me with what I thought was love were now flat and calculating, like a predator sizing up prey. There he is, she said with a smile that didn't reach those cold eyes. My husband. Ex-husband. I corrected, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Technically, yes, since you were so eager to divorce me. But Edwin, we never finished our conversation from this afternoon. Marcus moved to my right, positioning himself between me and the back door. You've caused us a lot of problems, Edwin. Do you know how much money we've lost because of your interference? About the same amount you stole from me, I guess. He laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. We didn't steal anything. We earned it. Do you know how hard it is to live with someone for 5 years, pretending to love them, catering to their every need, playing the perfect wife? It was quite a performance, I said, looking at Jolene. Very convincing. Thank you. She actually looked pleased by the compliment. I've gotten very good at it over the years. Each husband teaches me something new about what men want to hear. How many have there been? You were number 7, Marcus said. And the most challenging. Most men are so desperate for love that they believe anything. But you were cautious, observant. We had to work much harder to gain your trust. Why me? What made you choose me? Jolene tilted her head, considering. You had money, but not too much. A stable job, but no family to ask awkward questions. And you were lonely, Edwin. So lonely that you'd fall in love with the first woman who paid attention to you. The words stung, because they were true. I had been lonely when I met her. Isolated and desperate for connection. And she'd given me exactly what I needed, exactly what she'd studied and planned to give me. Plus, you had that beautiful life insurance policy. Marcus added. $250,000, with double indemnity for accidental death. That hunting trip you had planned would have set us up very nicely. But then you had to go and ruin everything, Jolene said, and for the first time, I heard real anger in her voice. You couldn't just accept the story about my sick mother. You had to start investigating, asking questions, making phone calls. Sorry to inconvenience your murder plans. Murder is such an ugly word, Marcus said. We prefer to think of it as accelerated inheritance. He was moving closer now, and I gripped the kitchen knife tighter. But I knew a knife wasn't going to save me against 2 trained killers who had done this at least 6 times before. Here's what's going to happen, Jolene said, her voice taking on the tone she'd used when she wanted me to do something I didn't want to do. You're going to come with us, and we're going to stage a very convincing suicide. Depression over the divorce, financial stress, the shame of being deceived by your wife. It's a very believable story. And if I refuse? Marcus pulled a gun from his jacket. A small silver revolver that looked almost delicate in his hands. Then we'll stage it anyway, but it'll be messier. More painful for you. I looked at the gun, then at the 2 people who had planned to kill me, and felt something unexpected. Relief. Not because I wanted to die, but because the waiting was finally over. The games, the lies, the manipulation. It was all ending tonight. One way or another. You know what's funny? I said, surprising myself by actually meaning it. I actually loved you. For 5 years I genuinely believed that you loved me back. Jolene's expression softened slightly. I know you did. And Edwin, in my own way, I did care about you. You were kind to me, generous, trusting. If I were a different person, if I had a different life, I might have actually fallen in love with you. But you're not a different person. No. I'm exactly who I need to be. Marcus raised the gun, pointing it at my chest. Enough talking. We need to finish this and get out of here. That's when the lights went out. The house plunged into complete darkness. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. I heard Jolene gasp, heard Marcus curse and swing the gun toward where he thought I was standing. I dropped to the floor and rolled toward the living room, hoping to put some furniture between me and the gun. Federal agents! Drop your weapons! The voice came from outside, amplified by a bullhorn, and suddenly my house was flooded with light from powerful spotlights pointed through every window. Edwin Hartwell, if you can hear this, stay down! More voices, from multiple directions. The front door exploded inward, and black-clad figures poured through the opening. I heard Marcus fire the gun twice, the sound deafening in the confined space. Then a sharp crack that sounded like a taser. Clear left! Clear right! 2 suspects down! I stayed on the floor until someone touched my shoulder gently. Mr. Hartwell, are you injured? I looked up to see Agent Walsh, the man who had been shadowing me for the past week. His face was calm and professional, but I could see relief in his eyes. I'm okay, I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. The lights came back on, revealing Marcus on the floor near the kitchen, his hands zip-tied behind his back, blood trickling from his nose where someone had hit him. The gun lay several feet away, safely out of reach. Jolene was sitting against the far wall, also restrained, staring at the chaos in my living room with an expression of pure disbelief. How? She said, looking directly at me. How did you know? Agent Walsh helped me to my feet. The panic button worked exactly as designed, Mrs. Reeves. We were in position the entire time. But you intercepted their communications, she protested. You told them he changed his mind. No, Detective Chen said, appearing in my doorway with a satisfied expression. We let you think you'd intercepted our communications. We wanted you to believe you were in control, that you'd successfully isolated Mr. Hartwell. I stared at her. You knew they were coming. We've been tracking their movements since they left your office this afternoon. The phone call, the unlocked door, everything was part of a carefully orchestrated plan to get them inside your house, where we could arrest them safely. Marcus was struggling against his restraints, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over. There are others. People you don't know about. People who will come for you. Actually, Detective Chen said, pulling out a thick folder. We've been quite busy while you've been focused on Mr. Hartwell. We've arrested 6 members of your organization in 4 different states. Your operation is finished. The look of shock on Jolene's face was almost worth 5 years of lies. As they led her toward the door, she stopped and looked back at me one last time. I meant what I said, Edwin. If things had been different, if I had been different, I might have actually loved you. But you're not different, I said, echoing her words from earlier. You're exactly who you chose to be. She nodded once, then looked away. After they were gone, after the statements were taken and the evidence collected, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the debris of the night's events. Agent Walsh offered to arrange for me to stay in a hotel, but I declined. This was my house, and I wasn't going to let them drive me away from it anymore. Detective Chen appeared in my doorway one last time before leaving. Are you sure you're all right, Mr. Hartwell? I thought about it. My marriage had been a lie. My house had been stolen, and would need to be legally recovered. My savings account had been emptied. My trust in other people had been shattered. But I was alive. And for the first time in 2 years I knew exactly who I was and what my life was worth. I'm fine, I said. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I actually meant it. 6 months later, I received a letter from the federal prison where Jolene was serving her sentence, 25 years to life, with no possibility of parole. Marcus had gotten life without parole after they'd connected him to 2 additional murders in other states. I stared at the letter for a long time before throwing it away, unopened. I'd heard everything I needed to hear from her. I sold the house 6 months after that, once the legal complications had been sorted out. Too many bad memories, too many lies embedded in every room. I bought a smaller place across town, somewhere Jolene had never been, somewhere Marcus had never studied. I'm 50 now, and I've learned things about trust and love and betrayal that I never wanted to know. But I've also learned that surviving something like this changes you in ways that aren't all bad. I'm more careful now, but also more grateful. More suspicious, but also more appreciative of genuine kindness when I encounter it. And sometimes, late at night, I think about those other men who weren't as lucky as I was. Robert Mansfield, David Park, Michael Torres, and the others whose names I'll never know. Men who trusted the wrong person and paid for it with their lives. I survived because of luck. Because of a bank employee who noticed something wrong. Because of federal agents who knew how to set a trap. But mostly, I survived because when the moment came to choose between fear and action, I chose to fight back. That choice saved my life, and it's a choice I'll never regret making. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would have been your breaking point? What would you have done after finding that timeline? I'd love to hear your thoughts.